Philip K. Dick's Human Is, which was published in 1955, centers around Jill and her husband Lester. And it's a similar kind of dynamic as I've discussed in the last short story. She's a very free-spirited woman, very good-natured, but she's constantly at odds in conflict with her husband Lester, who is very cold, very callous, very controlling. However, things do change when one day her husband visits another planet called Rector. And at first, she thinks, okay, this is just going to be a vacation. Nothing is going to come of it. She doesn't really expect much. But then he comes back, only for her to realize that he's completely changed. His personality is completely different. He's warm, he's compassionate, he seems even more articulate, he's more charming, more on the genteel, I guess, side. And she discovers that this is because one of the Rectorians, one of the extraterrestrials who lives on this planet, had tried to escape, well, had actually succeeded in escaping from that planet in a non-physical form, in a different form of consciousness that was able to channel through his body, able to use his body as a medium. And that is why, indeed, his entire spirit and his entire outlook on things has changed. And she's, of course, relieved, but also concerned, as you would imagine. He has this also very keen, very deep insight that she's never seen in him before. And some of the things that come out of his mouth were things that I think, as I was reading it, it was almost spooky. It was like it gave me chills because it reminded me of dreams that I had as a child growing up. And it was commonly a trend for many of my dreams that at the end of each one, particularly with the nightmares, there would be some cryptic line or phrase that somebody would say, and then I would wake up. Usually it would be, as I said, some sinister figure in a bad dream who I encountered. And except that in this case, of course, it's a little bit different because Lester has changed. And he's now a very decent person, he's compassionate, but he has this way of speaking that's obviously very otherworldly, and so it evokes a kind of a ghostly quality that could only be true for him. It's like it's so unique. It's like the style is so distinct, you can almost taste it. And I love that. That's particularly, I think, one of his strong points in this story is that it's incredibly eloquent and very colorful use of language. And I'll read you a quote. One of the things that he brings up about his past self and what he thought about metaphors. Lester said, "Metaphors were inexact, misleading, and they're strange words, old words, words that you don't hear anymore." And so that's an example of a line that stuck with me because it reminds me so much of one of my dreams, not only in the sense that it depicts something paranormal and the fact that he's channeling something, but there's something, like I said, so almost dreamlike and eloquent, but it's a little bit shifty though, because basically in this scene, she's writing a lot of this down with this electronic pen, this strange pen that's able to channel the being that's from within him, that exists within him. And so it shows this whole other side of reality that is a little bit awkward when it comes out. It's like he can't really put words together that well at times. It's a little bit glitchy. It's kind of like I don't know if any of you have seen those videos about EVPs where they channel a spirit and then certain fragments of things will come through. And I think stylistically, this story is one of the strongest, I would say, because it reminds me so much of a scene, also many of those scenes from those psychological thrillers. And it's a cross between that very American kind of satire, that sort of exaggeration of very ignorant and very shallow, arrogant traits that you sense within the American culture, which Philip K. Dick, I think, often alludes to. And it combines that with Jean Cocteau's kind of style of being very, very dark and dreamlike. And it makes you, as I've said about other stories, makes you want to go there, makes you want to be in this less than ideal world, even though it wouldn't really work in your favor very well. You would want to be there just for the sake of wanting to observe. You feel like you want to be the fly on the wall, even though you wouldn't necessarily want to be caught up in that situation, which ends up not really working to her advantage, because towards the end, his old personality is restored once the being leaves his body. And I would highly recommend it because it's almost like the intelligence of the story of itself increases as it goes on. It goes from this very mediocre and very dull kind of talking head sort of world, not in a bad way. I mean, he's very good at depicting that type of relationship, that horrible relationship that she has. And then it suddenly changes tone. And you feel as if there's something more transcendent. And the interesting thing, though, is that Lester, even when he's changed, when he's become this paranormal being, you can still see traces of his old character, his old personality coming through. And he's exactly like one of those very complex figures that I would always think about as I was growing up. I'd always be mulling it over because that type of figure would always be very prominent in either many of my good dreams or my bad dreams.